Uncle Jeff is gone. Bruce Brown's gone. Lots of changes for the Denver Nuggets. It's a youth movement. We'll talk about the risk and the upside of that. We'll talk about, can Reggie Jackson be the guy the Nuggets need him to be? Adam's back with his reactions to not great free agency for the Denver Nuggets. This is Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us, making this your first listen. Appreciate you guys being with us on a Monday, or if you're listening to us live on YouTube, Sunday night, as we get you set for free agency kind of wrap up already, as most of the moves are done across the league. Only a handful of big trades left to kind of be worked out. Most of the things have been done. On today's show, we'll get Adam Mares, who's back with me today, his thoughts on Bruce Brown. We'll talk about the departure of Jeff Green. We'll talk about the addition of Justin Holiday. We'll talk about the dilemma for Jamal Murray. We'll talk about the risk and the upside of the youth movement that the Nuggets are banking on with their bench. All that and more on today's show. We appreciate you making yourselves an everydayer and joining us every single day. We appreciate you guys being with us on whatever platform that you've chosen. If you're on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, make sure you give us those 5-star reviews. Help us promote the show. Like and subscribe on the old YouTube channel. Best way for you to support the show. Today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. I'm Matt Moore. I'm senior NBA writer for the Action Network, joined by Adam Mares, back from the mountains of Wyoming. Glad to have him with us. And we will talk all things today, Adam, but we will kind of start here. Bruce leaves on a massive deal. Talked about that on Friday's show. Jeff Green takes off for Houston as he also gets a huge chunk of change. If you win a championship, your value as a player tends to go up a little bit, and those guys got good deals. The Nuggets bench is going to be younger. The Nuggets bench is going to be thinner. The Nuggets bench is going to be more volatile, but it could also be better. What's your reaction to what's gone on over the weekend for the Nuggets in free agency?
I'm not kidding when I tell you, Matt, that my very first reaction to all of this was, wow, the Nuggets are determined to make you and me fight all year.
I don't know. We'll talk about it. I don't know. I don't think we're going to fight that much because, I'm not hitching my wagon to Reggie Jackson.
I didn't like. They really made things hard on you for sure.
I didn't like the signing at the time.
Yeah.
And I don't like the fit now. I talked about that on Friday's show. We'll talk about the money and how I don't like that aspect of it. I think they overpaid and gave too many years. And so, Justin Holiday, Harrison Wind, Mike Singer are both really projecting this as, an Ish Smith type of end of the bench role. I still have hope that Justin can turn it around after 2 rough seasons because I look at, the whole career. But, I'm not going to sit here and act like I don't think that Peyton Watson is any good. I think mostly what this is going to come down to is just
you don't think Peyton Watson?
The real line here is
what's weird about that, Matt. We haven't seen Peyton Watson. I mean, I would to say that. Yeah, you're because I would understand if you said we don't know if he's good or this it's a mystery box, which of course could be obviously terrible. But to say you feel he's not good.
No, I didn't say that. I said I'm not going to say that. This is my thing is what you're saying is exactly what I think. If I said otherwise, I misspoke. We don't know.
Yeah, we just don't know.
I feel that people like CT3, who's in the chat segment and continuing the Vlaco agenda, I feel very strongly that the don't know is not reason for confidence. It's not reason for skepticism, but usually unknowns in the NBA. The NBA is hard, right?
Right. Well, so we're on a delay, so we're kind of talking over each other. The third segment, we'll get to, I think, maybe more of the risk, whatever of this, because it really is a risk with what they're going. Man, I think your internet connection is a little rough there, man. Yours or mine? I think it's yours, though. But just to kind of get into this, you were asking, first of all, foremost, let's start with Bruce because he's gone. $22 million is an insane amount of money. Not insane. Great for Bruce. That's a lot more. It reminds me of the Jeremy Grant deal when we all went into free agency saying, man, what if somebody offers him 15 million? What if somebody offers him, 13 or whatever? Then it was 20. It reminds me of that, where we kept thinking he could get upwards of 14 or 15 and he gets 22 million from a team. So congrats to Bruce. I don't think there's anything you could have. We thought he might come back, and I still think there was a chance he would have re-signed if it was an MLE or, Denver's $8 million roughly. I think there was a chance he would have re-signed. But when you get that kind of money, obviously he's gone. And for starters, the thing about Bruce, because I've seen people make this case about Bruce, about, Denver won't miss him. The case people have made is, if you look at what happened when he didn't share the court with the starters, he was terrible and he didn't make any difference on them, and it was a bad lineup. And they're right about that. What they're wrong about is why that doesn't matter or why that should matter. The truth is, Bruce was a great sixth starter. And in the playoffs, that gave you lineup flexibility, and he was huge in Denver's ability to solve any problem, which is what the playoffs are about. So I think Denver is really going to miss Bruce. So I want to start there, because we have to start from a position of Denver did lose something of real value, regardless of what the on-off numbers in the regular season told you. So I just wanted to start from that baseline point. You effectively appear to be replacing him now with Reggie Jackson as the veteran guy who's going to probably be penciled in as the guy that gets those minutes. Completely different type of player. And then you're going to have Pickett, Strother, and Colin Gillespie behind him, all of whom will have a chance throughout the course of the season to overtake him. So the mystery part of that, the rookies, okay, we'll put over here. The Reggie Jackson piece, it's just such a different lineup. I want to give Reggie a shot, because I have been pretty harsh on my opinions of Reggie Jackson, but he doesn't do the things that Bruce did in any way. He's a completely different mold of player.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that he's more of a traditional, just standard backup point guard. I don't necessarily think that he's a great table setter. I don't think that he's a great playmaker. I don't think that he's a great raises the floor of everybody else. He was good for the Clippers because they needed some guys that were going to go out there and make some shots, have some big plays, and just kind of get them through rough stretches. And he can do a little bit of that. I think he would probably do it better with more effective bigs. That's one of the problems is the backup center position they didn't address, in part because you go through the playoffs and you didn't need it. Why would you address it when you didn't necessarily you need an innings eater and they don't really have one. And so they're just going to kind of be piecing it together. Maybe that's Zeke Naji.
Yeah. I mean, I think that this is the other part, and the chat has kind of got ahead of this. This is clearly Calvin Booth looking at the roster and saying, no, I'm going to force the Malone now to play the lineups that I think are best. Last year, there was the out of DeAndre Jordan, the out of Thomas Bryant. Those guys played a lot of minutes. It's a very small sample size, but the one time in the regular season where the bench unit looked good for a sustained number of games is when Zeke and Vlatko both played and they had to switch everything lineup. Can I say with full confidence that that is a winning formula? No, especially without Bruce. But I do think that it deserves the benefit of the doubt to say, hey, I can understand why you would believe in that combination as your center, your backup centers. Yeah. If Jokic gets hurt, you're kind of screwed one way or another. So it's not like, well, what do you do if Jokic gets hurt? You're just screwed. But I do think that you told me Zeke and Vlatko as a 4-5 combo there, I'd be like, yeah, I think that's actually better than Thomas Bryant or DeAndre Jordan would have been. By the way, he's still there, DeAndre Jordan.
Yeah. I think I don't disagree. I'm not going to I'm trying to think how to put this. Again, I question the confidence, not the idea of it working. So Vlatko, I thought had earned the minutes over Jeff, right? I thought that Vlatko should play. I thought Vlatko had earned it. I thought that that's how it should have been. I am not, from a basketball pundit position, I'm not exactly high on the fact that Vlatko Chanchar lost his job to injury to a guy that he took it from and didn't get it back when most other guys would get that job back. So I think Vlatko deserves it. Credit,
it worked out.
Right. And you can also argue, he would be you can't listen to plus minus unless it's if it's in his favor, he'll be now the plus minus. So that's kind of my thing is look, Jeff had some big plays. It was great. Validated my long-standing support of the guy. But like, we could be real. After round 2, he was getting round 2 in the game. Like the bench won their minutes. After round 2, he was a minus. Like he just was, right? Maybe Vlatko's not a minus when you get to round 3. Maybe he's not a minus when you get to the finals. Maybe he's not a minus the same way.
Or Zeke. Yeah, one of those two. But yeah.
Yeah, or Zeke. Honestly, at this point, my thing with Zeke Naji is just like, gonna have to be healthy for more than a nanosecond. Like gonna have to actually stay on the floor, because if you're not able to stay on, like that's a lot of his situation. I think Zeke's thing is less about his play, and I think it's more about if you're trying to get into the rhythm of a season and everybody knows their rotation, it's really hard when a guy is constantly out, which he has been constantly out with those injuries. Like it's just been a real problem for him.
So somebody brought up that, and it's possible, this is just a theory, but it's possible Zeke's entire career so far has been months on the bench and then months playing a lot. And that maybe that like start, stop could be part of what contributes to the injury. I don't know, but it is at least interesting. But you're not wrong. Like he needs to play. I mean, he's had momentum to staying in the lineup twice now in his career, and both times it's ended by injuries at the wrong moment, so that when he returned to health, it was like the end of the season was in sight.
On the other side, we'll talk a little bit more about the changes that are coming to the Nuggets bench rotation. I'll get Adam's thoughts if he has any on the addition to Justin Holiday. We'll talk a little bit more about what they're going to miss from Jeff Green and Bruce Brown, all that more on the other side. I want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Just pick 2 to 6 players, and if they'll go over or under on their chosen numbers, they're available in Colorado, and you can win up to 6 times your money on any entry. All you got to do is use promo code Locked On. You get a 100% instant deposit match. That's an instant deposit match of up to 100% on however much you put in. You put in $100, they'll give you $100. You put in 50, they'll give you 50. That's PrizePicks, daily fantasy made easy. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets, thanks for joining us and making this part of your day. I'm glad that Ryan Blackburn's in the chat segment saying who will replace Jeff Green's 1 rebound per 36. I'm going to do that. I'm going to be tweeting every single time that Vlatko Cancar or Zeke Naji do not have a good rebounding night. I will be tweeting that every single time next season. That's why we're going to fight this season.
That'll be fun.
That'll be good times. No, I mean, look, here's the thing. It's just like, and this kind of gets into it is, and we could talk a little bit more about the additions and losses of signings, but this really is the core of it. Like, this is why, I think it's tough for us to talk about these other things. It's like, we can talk about what they'll miss with Bruce and what they'll miss with Jeff. But so much of this is like they're going to have to be a different team next year. Like they're just going to have to be a different team because you do not get to be what you were this year. And I have more concerns about it because I'm like, look, the odds are you're not going to have the injury luck that you had last year. You might, right? But long playoff run leads to fatigue. That's before we talk about FIBA. And then on top of it, injuries. Let's set Jokic aside because, one, he's a tank. But just like Aaron Gordon sprains an ankle out 3 weeks. Like, these are the kind of things that are going to mess with you a lot more than they would have had you just brought back everybody and if you could have brought back everybody. Like, let's be clear on this. Somebody was like, why is the team being cheap after winning a championship? No. Like, the Nuggets could not pay the players that left what they got paid. Like, I guess technically they could have paid the MLE for Jeff, but do you want to be paying the MLE for Jeff? I don't think so. I don't think that's a decision that you want to make. And so, like, you literally cannot return. You could not pay them what they got paid. But with them leaving, you will miss like those nights when Jeff had good games and made a 3 or had a dunk or played good defense or needed that matchup, whatever. That's now off the table. Those games where you needed Bruce Brown to be able to make some plays, or when Jamal gets in foul trouble or KCP gets in foul trouble and Bruce Brown slots right in, you're going to miss that because even if Christian Brown makes a jump, Christian Brown is probably not going to be able to make the jump just because of like the knowledge base and experience of playing in the NBA for more than a season, right?
Well, I think your other point was probably the one that I think is more important, which is just that the team is going to have to be different now. The second unit is going to have a different identity. And I'll go ahead and say this. It can be a better team, I think we all have kind of like ran to, you lose Bruce, you're almost certainly going to be a worse team. And I think it's like odds-on favorite that you do lose a little something there. Let's forget the starters and the fact that the starters could actually be better this year than they were last year. But when we just talk about the depth and this or that. But what is the identity? Let's piece it together now. Reggie Jackson. Now, he's a high-volume, ball-in-his-hand scorer. He can get hot. He's going to have some hot games. But he is a scorer first and foremost, scoring point guard. You have Christian Brown, who's a great defender, who should be a better defender next season. He should probably be a better offensive player next season. You have Peyton Watson, who's a very good defensive player, has a chance to be a very good defensive player. And if he works, it'll likely be because he's an impact defensive player. You have Zeke Naji, another guy who I think we both agree. You love Jeff, but Bruce will be missed. Jeff, I think, will be replaced. Yes. I think that one, you know, you can hold that one. And then maybe a Vlatko there for good measure. To me, I look at that and I go, it is different, but the defense, they might have a more defensive-minded identity with Zeke's versatility, Peyton and Christian all sort of being guys that can make, you know, steps up between last year and this year. The offense is the part to me where and the offense and then the versatility with the starters, if a Murray goes out or whatever and you need to plug a guy in, I don't know that there's a guy that's a multi-tool the way Bruce was. So those are the two things I think you lose, but you might have a better defensive idea. Like Denver might be a top 12 defense next year just by virtue of the bench is going to be can be really good defensively, and you're not weighed down so much by when they're on the court.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. So like Jeff had really bad defensive stretches. I'm not arguing otherwise, but he's physical and he's big and he has that old man strength. And Zeke is a really great perimeter defender in that he can move his feet and contain and contest shots. But you would agree that he's probably not as strong, right?
As Jeff Green?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Like defensively?
You kind of think so?
I just don't know. I mean, they're kind of like the same build.
I feel like Zeke is way more wiry, but maybe I just need to look at that again. That's the only thing that I would like be a little worried about. But again, like just being able to like switch on the guards is better, right? Like the stuff that he's able to do, and maybe he like really evolves into something like serious. It'll be interesting just because we are talking about what is interesting here is I think is the front office is like, we got to develop the young guys, which I think is accurate. It's also smart in the context of building the team. Like I'll say this in favor of the youth, this pathway that they've taken, it's better than trying to plug holes with 1 year vets at the end.
Yeah.
Because the Bucks ran into this problem where it's just like, well, we got Wes Matthews and we got Joe Ingles, and like you're plugging holes, just trying to get enough in for you to be able to get to the end. And then like then you have to do it all over again. And when guys like they get older, so they get a little bit worse or they get injured, there's diminishing returns there. So having like this pipeline of maybe Pickett can become the backup point guard and that solves that problem. And then we can move off of Reggie Jackson. And then, Peyton Watson becomes the backup 3-4 and Zeke becomes the backup 4-5 and Vlatko, the backup 4-5. And so like that pipeline is more of a long-term sustainability project for you. So you can add what you need as opposed to trying to plug holes in a leaky ship with the veteran minimum signings.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you on that because there's a short runway to that. I mean, there could be a short runway to missing on your young prospects too. Like, I mean, let's just put this out there. Peyton Watson needs to be good. Like that's a big pivot point for the Nuggets next year. If he's not good, you are just rolling with Justin Holiday and with Reggie Jackson, which are two guys that's like we kind of know more or less where their ceilings are. So Peyton Watson becomes a huge pivot point. And then the other guy, I know I hype him up a lot, but the other guy I kind of look at through all of this I look at Jalen Pickett and I think it's tough to put a rookie in a position where you need him to win a championship. Like that's a really, really, really tough, especially as a point guard, maybe the slowest developing position at the NBA level. That's why there's so few true point guards, is the runway is typically pretty long. So I'm skeptical, even though I love Jalen Pickett and I'm as high as anybody in the world on him, I'm skeptical of that part. But the lineups do make more sense conceptually to me. Maybe it's a year down the road. Maybe it's not next year, but the year down the road when you start to say Pickett, a true point guard, a setup guy, Christian, and with decent size. Christian Brown, who's huge for a shooting guard, defender, slasher. Peyton Watson, slasher, with length. Zeke Naji, even spacing the court. He needs to find his three-point shot again. That needs to return to old form, not last year's form. But that lineup actually starts to come together for me in a way where I'm like, you know what? That could be something good. I think the Nuggets are probably, based on how they assembled the roster, probably more optimistic that can happen next year. I think that part takes a little bit of a leap of faith, but at least that becomes a little bit more coherent. And then lastly, with the Reggie thing, I keep thinking this, Matt, and I don't know. Reggie was he joined Denver. He chose Denver. And I always wonder, because he got 2 years, and it seems so, and he got a player option on it, which just seems so wild. When you think about, he got more money than he thought. He thought veteran minimum 1 year. He got 2 years above that. And part of me does just wonder if that was part of that's part of the goodwill of like, hey, he signed here because we were committed to him. He didn't really play. And it's like, yeah, but this was part of it. Come in. The guys liked him. He was well liked, probably finishing his career in his hometown. And there was a little bit of we owed him for picking us. And this is part of the plan. I don't know. But that could be part of it.
Yeah. I don't think that there's anybody that is like there's nobody I've seen that was like, oh, great signing on Reggie Jackson. Like everyone's been like, yeah, that was weird. And it's not like a ton of money. It's $5 million a year. It's fine. It's just like, it doesn't seem optimal. It's not exciting. The fans aren't like very excited about it. And I think that's just like, if they're right and it's fine, it's like, oh, hey, that worked out, The other thing I think that is kind of notable here in terms of direction, because you talked about how some of those lineups can make sense. I talked a lot on Friday about like, look, I think they'll probably be a different team by the deadline. Like, I still kind of believe that. Like, I think they'll be a different team by the deadline.
Who are the most likely trade candidates?
Zeke.
I'll throw Vlatko in there, even though I don't think it's a ton of value, but you never know.
Zeke, Vlatko. I think Peyton Watson would have to be like either so good they can't. It's like, oh wow, and it's a high cash in mark, or
they have a bunch of. Well, okay. I can't see it, but yeah.
I can't see it. Yeah, it's his guy, so I just can't see it. And then like, I don't know, the starters is like the that would mean that things have gone seriously awry.
Let's give this scenario. Let me give you a funny scenario. Let's say Christian Brown takes a step up and is having a very solid season, but he's a role player, but he's even better. Let's say Peyton Watson hits and is having a like breakout for basically a redshirt rookie year. Is Strother and Tyson more likely to be traded? Like, our team's looking at them going, hold on, I'll take. Oh, let's also say Pickett's playing and he's playing well. Do people look at that and go, okay, we got to trust Calvin? Like, Cal's other guys now have value. No. They've never played.
In my personal experience, the answer is no, because they will always think they will trust their opinion and their staffs and be like, no, we weren't high on them. Like they're never going to outsource an opinion.
Okay. All right.
The only thing that worked with is free agents from the Heat. And then everybody goes like, oh no, what have we done? Okay. On the other side, I do have like a question for you about how this could wind up working out down the line and why the timing of it kind of matters. Well, I'll talk about the Justin Holiday signing. We'll do that on the other side when we return on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. I feel bad for Nuggets fans because everybody had like their guy that they were like really hopeful for. Like there's talk in the chat about like Dario Saric or Juan Ingles or this guy. Like CT has been basically every day tweeting like they could trade for DeLon Wright. They could trade for DeLon Wright. I don't think DeLon Wright's getting traded now after they dealt Monte Morris, by the way. So like all this is interesting. I think one thing with the timing of this, I said that, by the trade deadline, they'll be different. If you don't have yes, this is the plan, which is kind of what the Nuggets are. They do not you could say no, like we feel really good about it. Okay. But we don't know. Like, we just don't know. You would rather go young first and then go like, all right, that didn't work out. Let's go find this role.
Yeah, let's pivot,
right? Versus get guys that don't work and then have to be like, now we got to trade that guy out because we got to try the young. You don't want to try and pivot to a young guy movement mid-season on the bench.
Right.
You instead want to start young, find out what works and what doesn't, see if Strother can play, if Pickett can play, if Watson's going to make a jump in offensively, because I think we both agree he could defend. If Christian can get his 3-point shot settled, right? Because that's going to be
or some kind of offensive game. I mean, we all kind of assume it'll be a 3, but maybe it's a little more drive game or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Answer those questions. And then if you get to the deadline and they're like, man, we really need a floor spacer 4. Man, we really need a legitimate backup 5. Like whatever it is. I think that one of the concerns though with this, and people have kind of mentioned this, again, I will continue to hammer. Malone played RJ Hampton, played his ass off. He played RJ Hampton. Malone played Christian Brown. Like Malone has played the young guys that he has felt needed to play. He just has not played. He has not given infinite leash to young guys. And I think that when you're trying to maintain discipline in an organization, that's important. But when I will also follow up with that is this is going to make it harder because Malone's more likely, as they're trying to get through what's going to be a tougher regular season, because they're just not as talented now. Like they lost Bruce, right? Like they're just a little less talented than they were. And also if there's injuries, he's going to probably lean more towards, I'm going to play the starters more. And that's where you start getting in the Nick Nurse, like vortex of doom. Right?
That could be bad. I mean, let me push back though on the one thing about, especially when we talk about a regular season, Murray wasn't good for 20 games last year. And that's pretty, I mean, you go back and look at his early games, he was not good. He got better as the season went on, was phenomenal in the playoffs.
Yep.
That's something that Denver should be able to survive a little bit better because he should be good from the start. You never know, but he should be good from the start. Nuggets also took their foot off the gas for the last month of the season. And then you look at it and say, MPJ, if he has health, should be a better player next year. He was coming off a full year off last year. He also had a ramp-up time. So I look at that and I go, I'm not so sure Denver's going to be like there's this drop-off in their regular season record. I do think that they're going to be a less complete team. And that's what really matters in the playoffs, how complete you are. But this idea that Denver's going to have to survive the regular season, I also wonder this. You always go for home court. You push, you push, you push. I wonder if Denver is a little more relaxed on that this year, especially when you think about who are the teams that are likely vying for the 1 seed right now. If it's like a Sacramento or, one of those teams, Denver might say, we're the experienced team now. We'll take the 2. We'll take the 3, whatever it is. I don't know.
I think that's a good point. I think it's interesting that we're kind of on opposite sides, which is I think they'll be fine in the playoffs because you can just play your starters in the playoffs, and we see that. I'm really I am concerned about them in the regular season, only from the context of what you would prefer. Like you prefer they win 55 games and secure the 1 seed. And now I'm like, that's less likely to me now. Now I think that they're probably closer to 49 to 52 and that you can wind up in the 2, 3, 4 in those situations. And then it's like, okay, you do have to go on the right. Like all these type of things are part of the larger picture. But if you're like, well, are you worried about them in the playoffs? My answer is no. Like they know what it takes to win a championship. You can slide. Like once you win that championship, it does provide you with both. It's honestly like it is a self-fulfilling prophecy that once you know how to do it, you're all of a sudden you're like, we don't need home court. I know what it takes to go into Phoenix and win game 6. Like I know what it takes. And that I think that does impact things. Like they still have the best starting 5 in the league, in my opinion, when healthy.
Yeah.
I am still though, like I am deeply concerned about the injury part of it because I've seen so many championship hangovers, FIBA on top of it, and just simple luck. Like they were really healthy this year.
Well, first of all, I'm not sure if anybody's playing FIBA yet. I mean, it's really just Yoke, and we'll find out.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have any thought? Let's hit this real quick. Do you have any thoughts on Justin Holiday, or are you just like, he's a guy, he's Ish Smith?
I think he's an Ish Smith to me. I mean, he was a guy we all wanted 4 years ago. He doesn't move the needle for me in that way, but
Hawks fans are very convinced that he is completely washed and terrible.
Dallas too. I had my Dallas buddies reaching out as well. So
yeah. He
wasn't there for very long.
Yeah. Well, let's just be really clear on this. He was literally thrust into a situation with one of the worst coaches in the NBA on a team actively trying to lose games because they're cowards. Like it's fine, but that was their best move because they needed the pick. but that's where he was. So like, that's kind of where I'm at is I'm like, look, here's where he's been. Sacramento before they got good. Atlanta under Nate, which was like a real, like that team was a disaster. They were the most disappointing team to me in the league last year. Atlanta was, and they were just such a mess all over the place. Everybody underperformed. Right. And then AJ Griffin was really good. He needed to not play because AJ Griffin was like the sole guy I thought was really good on that team. And then he goes to Dallas, and that's kid on a tanking team. Okay. My thought is 34 years old, finds a team that plays a smart way with a good locker room. This is exactly the type of player that gets into Denver and is like, oh God, this is great. Oh God, you guys actually know what you're doing. Oh, this is amazing.
There's a lot of players like that. I mean, he is 34, so he's a little bit older, but there are players like that they bounce back when they get into a system that's coherent basketball.
Yeah. And maybe he just can't shoot and he's done, because there are guys that I've liked that their shot just goes away and it never returns. Justin's more of an Austin Rivers.
Like Austin Rivers was good. He was way better than I thought he was going to be when he arrived in Denver. And so there is some precedent for that. But the youth part of here is the real interesting one to me, Matt, just because if you tell me that it's like there's no Jeff Green anymore, there's still DeAndre Jordan, but he's a year older, and Malone, to Malone's credit, did not play him much. And I have to think that him coming back was much more of a, hey, the way the season ended is probably how we're going to start it, and we'll go from there. Be ready, and he'll step into his moments. But it seems like that makes sense. But you still are counting on Christian Brown, Peyton Watson, and Zeke Naji in some capacity to make an impact on this team. And that, I think, that is very rare for a reigning NBA champ with aspirations of repeating to go into a season counting on 3 guys to be in your top 9 who collectively have fewer than 3,000 minutes in the NBA. That I would bet that's pretty rare.
Yeah. I think I don't want to box myself into a position. That's I think where I'm at, is I want to have an open mind. I don't want to do what I've usually done, which is like, oh, everyone's really high on this guy. I'll take the other side of that. Like, the hype's gonna. I don't want to do that. Like,
is there a guy people are high on though for the Nuggets? Part of it is this is a little bit. It's not as polar as typical.
Yeah,
right?
Everybody's got. It's a different guy. It's either Vlatko, who's not young but is of that group, Zeke or Peyton.
Vlatko's a veteran, man.
Yeah,
Vlatko's been in the NBA for this will be his 6th season or something.
Yeah, he's established. And so. Like it's possible, like, maybe Christian. By the way, Christian's not playing summer league. That dream that idea died in the wind.
I think it's Peyton, and then behind that it would be Pickett or.
This Strawberry. Is a lot of it is like Peyton was sensational for, I don't know, how many games would you say it was?
4. I mean, it wasn't many. It wasn't many minutes at all.
Yeah, and that's kind of it. Is like he was so exciting and he was so different from the rest of the bench and basically everybody outside of AG that people got really excited about him, which I get. But there's, I think, a lot there for him to work on offensively. And, Strother, you're not high on. Other people are high on. We'll see kind of like what it looks like. Maybe he excels. This is more the thing, is that there's more uncertainty. Like, this is kind of how I view it, is like by year 6 in the NBA, I narrow down the range of outcomes for you, both bad and good. Like, if you stuck in the NBA until your 6th season, I'm like, no, he's like an NBA player. He's going to be on roster. Like, he's proven he could stick. But likewise, like, if you haven't made the jump, it's less likely that you make the jump to, 2nd, 3rd best player on a team or superstar level. It happens. It's just rare. With the young guys, again, it's very much like there's just a wide, and it's going to, honestly, the other thing with young guys is it vacillates wildly within the course of the season. And this was true, like with Jamal, that there were games where he was phenomenal and there were games where he was awful. And like, it's just a higher variance thing. And that, honestly, but though part of this is fine, because we'll talk about, like, because they won a championship, we have this, like, or not you, I do. I have like this, yeah, but they were part of the championship core. Yeah, but the bench sucked all year. It sucked all year. It was bad all year, except for that stretch that you mentioned when Zeke and Vlatko played. So, like, literally, there's no risk here. Like, what's the bad outcome? Oh, they're as bad as they were last year when the Nuggets got the number 1 seed in the Western Conference and won the championship. So, like, what's the downside? I think is where I've got to get my kind of thought process to.
Right. And another thing that along the lines of what you're saying here, I saw somebody had a comment. Oh, here it is. Why the hell did you give 2nd-round picks for Bryant when they just let him walk? Waste. It's not a waste. They won an NBA championship. Like the same, I saw the same take for Bruce. Like, oh, you don't get anything for him. What a waste. Like, guys, no, it's not a waste. They got rid of a player that they felt they were not going to win with. And it would have been great if they would have gotten back all the things we could wildly dream about. But they had to do what they had to do to get a roster that was cohesive and won an NBA championship, 16 wins, 4 losses. Sometimes the cost of doing business isn't sexy. And I think the longer I do this, Matt, there's different ways to like basketball. And I don't want to be the guy that tells people how to and how not to, because there's people that like different aspects of the NBA than I do. The free agency / draft daydreaming part of it, the more I do this, the less interesting it is to me. And you guys will notice I didn't do the whole, like on either this show or DNVR, I didn't do a whole lot of the like, let's take a look at free agent X, free agent Y, free agent. A lot of this is because I knew more or less what the Nuggets' hopes were for free agency and what the scope was, but also because playing the fantasy GM role where you kind of are like, what would I do if I'm building a roster, is inherently, from a fan's perspective, there's no slight on fans, is inherently missing an enormous amount of context about what we really need is these 7 guys, and everyone else just needs to be behind them. And a lot of roster building goes into that. And I think a lot of this right here is the front office's vision of, we have the next guys on the roster ready to go. And we need guys that are going to either be placeholders or be behind them early on in a way that really supports them. And I just think whether they're right or wrong, that was the vision. That's what they're going with. And everything else was just like fantasy stuff. It was never a possibility, and it was never part of what they were looking for.
I haven't asked this question. Do you think that there were more guys that they called about?
No.
Or do you think they literally just didn't make a lot of calls?
Calls. I think they probably made a lot of calls, because I think part of the job of a GM is you talk to everyone, because even if you're not trying to get a player, you just learn things from talking to people. Like, oh, I didn't realize that we were talking about this guy, but they mentioned this guy, so I know they're lower on him than you think. Like, you just learn things. I just think that they looked at it. Look, we've heard Calvin speak publicly several times now about Peyton Watson. He really believes in him, not just as a player that can come in and be this. He believes in him to be a Bruce Brown type everything. He believes in his offense in a way we've never seen. He definitely believes in his defense in ways that we've seen tiny flashes of. So I just think he's like, hey, that's our guy. And then you look around at some of the other pieces, and I think he just looks at it and says, yeah, we have the guys, and now we just need to put some supporters around them.
Do you like that approach? I don't think it's good or bad. I think it's entirely like a personal opinion thing of like, what do you prefer, a probabilistic approach, which is a lot of like the folks I talk to, and then there are guys that are like, they have their guys, like they're like, no, I believe in this, like this is gonna work, like, and it's just a matter of like your preference of how you like. And if you win, like if you're a fan and it wins, you'll be like, I like that approach, right?
So Hurricane says, took how many years to learn what Carl kept telling you, meaning Coach Carl? Because George Karl like just does not believe in young guys winning. Like, you don't win with them, you win with vets. I'll say I'm like I said, I'm skeptical of that many young guys being ready right away to win a championship. And the Nuggets are ready to win a championship. So I'm skeptical of it. The thing that pushes back against my skepticism is how much I love Pickett. I just love Jalen Pickett's game. So he's like my kind of guy. And Peyton is probably the more important one. And he's the one that I'm much more agnostic about. I'm waiting to see. I need to watch him play before I form a strong opinion about him. But I will say it is very young. I'm a little concerned because it's very, very young. If they did win with the guys we just mentioned, it would be a pretty young or inexperienced group. I shouldn't say young. These guys are all.
Who's going to be the guy that I'm like skeptical of? Who's going to be the guy that I'm like, I don't know. Plus minus is bad. I don't know.
I mean, Pickett for sure. You and I have to be on opposite sides.
No, I don't want to do this. I like that. Like, I like what I've seen of him. Why do I don't want to.
He's so fun, man.
I don't want to hate booty ball. Don't paint me in that corner.
Say booty ball. I just want to hear you say booty ball.
Don't paint me against booty ball. Don't do that. Don't pit me.
Matt and Adam coming together for booty ball. I mean, I don't. Like I said, man, I don't know. It's interesting. I do think the Nuggets have a lot of firepower. They have a lot. I mean, they won a title. I always say, especially young players, and I'm counting Jokic and Murray here. They've won a championship early enough in their careers that I think it gives you a confidence boost. And that's the part that gets me more. When we talk about all this other stuff, it really is the margins. I'm excited to see what Jamal and Jokic look like when they know they're the baddest duo in the NBA. I want to see them wreck the league.
I gotta note this. Y'all know Vlatko was in the Nuggets' second most efficient and third best net rating plus minus lineup last year. I'm gonna guess that Nikola Jokic was in that lineup. Like, guys, if you put somebody next to Nikola Jokic, they're gonna have a good net rating. It's why Emmanuel Mudiay was removed, was because he was the only player I've ever seen that had a negative net rating next to Nikola Jokic.
It's very, very weird. I think I will say one of the reasons that I'm high on Pickett is I do have hope that he can facilitate a similar style of basketball as Jokic. And I do think that's another thing about Reggie. Him captaining a non-Jokic lineup, he's such a different player than Jokic, and the way you play off him is so different. And I just think that can be difficult for players as well. So, like I said, I know people are going to be so mad at me with my Reggie. People call it Reggie hate. Look, a hometown kid finishing his career here and being an impact player, that's a great story, man.
It's a stylistic
Mr. Colorado. I would love it.
My thing is not even about how good Reggie Jackson is. It's a stylistic fit.
That's what I'm trying to say. Exactly. It's exactly that. They have to play a different style with Reggie, and I think that's hard, but maybe he proves me wrong, and I would love it.
I don't think that Reggie Jackson is a Jokic player, and that doesn't mean that he's bad. It's that, like, not everybody in basketball can be a Jokic guy. Like, there's just differences, and a lot of teams need what Reggie Jackson provides. Like, I could see him being a definite trade candidate for a team that's looking for a backup point guard if the Nuggets find that Pickett is like, oh, hey, we might be able to get by with Pickett. Like, that could actually be pretty valuable, whether this year or next. Like, there's a lot of things that are like this. Effable says Reggie can't learn like AG did. I think Aaron Gordon was always a Jokic guy. He was just waiting for the opportunity.
Oh, Reggie's also just older, like further along in his career than Aaron Gordon was. But look, I will give this guy, because this looks like a new guy, so I'm guessing he's a Reggie guy. Mm-hmm. But I will say this: it's really hard to come into a new team as a buyout candidate at the deadline and then fit in, especially a team that was as far along in their own, arc as the Nuggets were. So giving Reggie first of all, tells you something that Reggie came in like that and they brought him back. He didn't disrupt anything, right? Didn't disrupt anything, and they said, hey, that's our guy.
Thomas Bryant was not brought back.
Well, but first of all, I've only heard about positive things about Thomas Bryant as well. I just think they were like, we don't need that position. We don't need this or that. And they already had DeAndre Jordan as a guy that was already doing that role, the like positive energy bench guy. But I just think there's something to them. He clearly fit in culturally to what the Nuggets were doing. And so maybe a full offseason, a full summer, more familiarity, and then most importantly, a training camp. He adjusts his game in a way that surprises me.
Okay, let's go wrap it up for Locked On Nuggets today. We'll react to whatever happens in the association between now and
tomorrow. There's Denver Nuggets practice, Matt. So excited.
Summer League practice.
I can't wait. Who's going to be the guy that's getting all the hype out of Summer League practice?
Strother.
I mean, this is we'll talk more about Summer League coming up. But this is a very interesting Summer League team in that there's a lot of guys. Usually there's like 3 roster guys and then a 2-way here. There's like 6 roster guys. A roster guy is going to come off the bench.
It's a very different team than last year. It's a very different team. We will have coverage for you. Actually, no show Tuesday. It's 4th of July. If you celebrate, enjoy the holiday. Wednesday, we'll be back with an episode, and we'll break down whatever the news is. Hopefully, Dan will get traded by then, so we can talk about how that shaked out. All those types of things. We'll get into the rest of it, as well as what Summer League roster's shaping up like. Thanks for joining us. Have yourselves a great day. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe. Give us the old like on YouTube. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you guys again next time on Locked On Nuggets.